tell the world.
Hi, I'm Johnny. This is Johnny Likes, the show where I talk about movies that I like. Today I'm talking about a vampire movie from the 90s, and it's got a literal ton of blood in it. Today, Johnny likes Blade. Blade is an action vampire movie from director Stephen Norrington based on the Marvel comic books. Blade is played by Wesley Snipes. He's half human and half vampire. He kills vampires because they killed his mommy. They bit her while she was in labor with him, making him the way he is. He's got a mentor helper buddy named Whistler, played by Chris Christopherson. The main bad in this is Deacon Frost, played by Stephen Dorff, who is a relatively young and power-hungry vampire. Deacon, of course, has an evil plan that involves Blade, and Blade wants to stop Deacon because Deacon is bad. I enjoyed this movie. The first half hour or so is pretty much all awesome. It starts off as we follow some young people go to what appears to be an underground rave. And it is an underground rave, except that it's for vampires. And our dude soon enough learns that he is now on the menu. Oh, they've also loaded up the fire sprinklers with blood. Blade shows up and crashes the party, takes out a whole bunch of vampires in stylish yet effective manner. From there we follow Blade to the hospital as he rescues Nabush Wright, who has been bitten by a not quite dead vampire. He takes her back to his secret hideout, where we meet Whistler, who is basically Blade's Q. And that's the best section of the movie. The rest of it is just kind of good. The action stuff is shot and choreographed well, and there are some genuinely good moments.
Freeze! Motherfucker, are you out of your damn mind?
But it just never quite reaches the heights of the opening scene. This film came out in 1998, which was kind of at the dawn of CG just starting to look good. It doesn't look good here. I remember thinking when I saw it initially in the theater that it looked decent, but that was just decent for the time. It's not like we believed that any of this looked real. It was just like, oh, they've gotten like a little bit better at this since Species. And it hasn't aged well at all, and it looks corny as hell, especially in high definition. All the seams are suddenly visible and very obvious. So I saw this in the theater when I was about 13, saw it with my dad. I remember after the opening blood rave scene, we just kind of looked at each other, high-fived, and went, "That was awesome!" It's still one of my favorite vampire carnage scenes of all time. If you watch the movie up to the conclusion of this scene, it's like easily a 5-star movie. It unfortunately does all kind of go downhill from there. Snipes is good as Blade. He is your atypical man of few words and even fewer emotions. He still brings Blade to life though. And when Marvel eventually remakes it, whoever plays him they're going to have some pretty big shoes to fill. I thought that Stephen Dorff was convincing as the younger vampire who's sick of the old ways. The Vampire Council of Elders and such. Speaking of that, how come there always has to be this weird hierarchy when it comes to secret societies? You don't always have to run it like a corporation or a monarchy. There are other options here, and these are like immortal beings. Some of them have been around long enough to... They probably could have come up with something better than a boardroom. Christopherson was fine as Whistler. Again, few words, fewer emotions. Mostly just pain and anger and being quiet about it. And Nibush Wright plays Karen, the outsider of the story, who is our kind of into the world and everyone explains stuff to, so we know what's going on.
You know how to use one of these?
Nope. But I damn sure learned quick.
Safety's off, rounds already chambered. Silver hollow point filled with garlic. You aim for the head or the heart. Anything else is your ass.
Chotomate. You have...
She was competent, but nothing special. She evokes sympathy when needed, and just happens to be a hematologist in it, and so she's able to also spout some blood science stuff. And Donald Logue is also in the film as Quinn, who is Stephen Dorff's kind of douchey right-hand man. He mostly plays for comic relief, but I like him as an actor, and so he was fine here for me. So I'm a big vampire fan, and the vampire hunter subgenre is something that I only sort of like. My main problem is that there tends to be a vampire underworld that follows all these different rules. It's the same kind of hypocrisy that usually goes with outsider societies. They couldn't fit in with normal society, and so they went off to start their own that is just as oppressive and controlling as the one that they just left. And this movie has that same problem. Vampires are by nature outside the law. They eat human beings. But they follow the laws of a vampire society? I just never really quite buy that. I give this movie a pass based mostly on the opening scene of the movie. I do like the rest of it. It's just never quite pulls me in as much as I would kind of like it to. I've never been the hugest comic book fan. I can appreciate the odd one here and there. But I've always been much more of like a 3-panel comics type guy versus like a superhero comics type guy. And Blade is the cartoony anti-hero type guy. The villain is a cartoony villain. The whole thing is just kind of cartoonish. The moments of ultraviolence and gore help to kind of try and trick your brain. But ultimately, it has always just kind of felt to me like it was written by and for 12-year-olds. Now, I know that I was 13 when I watched it, but it doesn't mean that I couldn't tell that it wasn't like a mature movie, apart from the graphic content of like, apart from the gore. It's quite similar in many respects to the Todd McFarlane Spawn movie that came out a few years before this. I should love both these movies as it appears on paper, but the execution just seems to prevent that for me on some level. I won't say much about the soundtrack, apart from the song playing in the Blood Rave. Is called Confusion, the Pump Panel Reconstruction Mix by New Order. And this gets my vote for greatest remix of all time. I know it's more of just a sample, but it's credited as a remix, so that's how I'm thinking of it. And I bumped this song 25 years later on a semi-regular basis, and it still works for me. What do you think the best remix of all time is? Let me know in the comments. To summarize, this movie does have some great action moments, and some decent performances with an okay story. But it does get a little bit bogged down by some poorly aged CGI, some kind of by-the-books characters, and some kind of unoriginal world building. Overall, it still gets a pass, and I do look back on this film with fondness. I'm also sure that this one will be vastly superior to whatever Marvel puts out as a reboot. I'm going to give it a 3.75 out of 5. I recommend this movie, but I can't pretend to myself that it is better than it is. So if you like this, check out Spawn. It's got an anti-hero, it's from a comic book, it's another black lead, it's violent, cool story, I want to like it more than I do. Check out From Dusk Till Dawn. It's got vampires, it's got George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino. They're in Mexico. I'm going to talk more about that one in the future. I'll do an actual review, but check that out anyways. Then you'll know what I'm talking about. Come to the review. Oh, yes, love it. Also check out Blade 2 for more Blade action. I've never really been a fan of Guillermo del Toro's films, and many people really like Blade 2. It does look quite different stylistically, so I do gotta give it that. So I will say check this one out, even if I don't like it. So what would you rate this movie? What do you think the greatest remix of all time is? What do you want to see me talk about? If you could let me know in the comments, that'd be ideal. And if you want to do me a favor while you're here and like and subscribe, it's quick, free, and relatively painless. Plus, it really helps me out. Thanks for watching me talk about movies for a little while, and you can tune in next time to see what else Johnny likes.
Ah!